This is Wycombe Sound.
Hello everyone, you're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wycombe Sound. I am your host Dane Cobain. This is the weekly show where we share local arts news. We have different guests each week. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for some short stories, poetry, creative readings, that sort of stuff. We play indie and unsigned music, and later on in the show we will head over to the Ilk Shed to catch up with Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show Hi Wycombe, you should be able to find us. You can also reach out to me here at the studio directly by emailing dane.cobain@wycombesound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wycombesound.org.uk. And I particularly want to hear from local musicians and creatives, anyone with news that might want to appear on the show, anyone who think they'd make a good guest, or anyone with MP3s as well. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can also listen again by going to the Listen Again on Wycombe Sound's website, or you can search on Spotify, iTunes, Buzzsprout, wherever you get your podcasts. You should be able to find us. So, without further ado, we're going to go over to this week's entry in the Rhylight Zone. And this is myself again with some more poems. Dane Cobain poetry. Here you go. Struggling to breathe on West End Street. The little train. The little train has little wheels that always keep a-rolling. The little train cried little tears and needed some consoling. The little train has little eyes and little ears for hearing. The little train had little dreams of angels disappearing. The little train is getting old and soon will need replacing. The little train went off the rails and needs a little chasing. The little train is rusty now and skies are clouding over. The little train is in the sea beneath the cliffs of Dover. From the mouth of a cat. I will fight you, puny human. You're just a giant rat in a baseball cap. Stroke me now before I growl and howl your tiny house down. You call that a garden? Mrs. Jones down the road grows roses and she feeds me fishies when I'm feeling greedy, which is almost all of the time. I don't have time for your whining. I sleep all night and I sleep all day and I try to escape when you're away from me. I remember ancient Egypt. The pharaohs had nothing on me, my sweet. Milk, bring me milk from the skulls of 1,000 virgins. Hold the door, Hodor, you've got to let me out. Let me out, let me out, let me out, let me out, meow, 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 meow. Blah. The common cold has got a hold on me and now I'm coughing and sneezing and trying not to smoke a cigarette. It's funny how we put man on the moon, smashed atoms together to find the Higgs boson and built our lives around convenience stores, but we can still feel ill and swallow paracetamol pills. Now, I'm not saying Big Pharma is selling soothers to boost their bottom line, but sometimes I think about Dickens laid up in front of an open fire, or Chaucer writing tales with a big red nose like Rudolph. I don't need germs or the lurgy to feel broken and dirty. I've been cold since I left the womb and now my empty room leaves me feeling blue and useless, so I'll wrap myself in a dressing gown and try to get some work done. I'll still be coughing in my coffin at the bottom of a hole that's cold and mouldy. I'd breathe deep but my lungs would weep and fill with liquid. The colours exploded. The colours exploded like a bomb beneath the water and it all rained down in an oil slick, refracting light through a prism of your own creation. Angry reds and angry blues and angry yellows in various combinations. Angry oranges and angry greens and angry violets like a pissed off poem for Valentine's Day. It's all the fun of flags with twice the hassle. Backwards plans to take a blank canvas and plaster it handsome. Hard to understand like a cancer scan or a pension plan, fam. When I dissolve into molecules, I'll be a see-through green on a computer screen, or a passionate red that's not right in their head, but baby, you can see my colours when you can't see nothing else, and besides, I was born to be a rainbow. You can be a rainbow too if you'd like to join me. Remembrance poem. I am a member of a privileged generation. I have to fight for what I believe in, not with guns on the Western Front, but with the same words Churchill used to raise the spirits of a nation. War is hell, it's kinda obvious, and yet we're so self-absorbed by selfies and porn that we forget those names on the war memorial. They're not just names, they're people who fought in the Second World War so we could take photos of what we eat in restaurants. Good men didn't do nothing. They risked their lives for you and I, and while the world has changed, some things remain the same, and if history repeats itself, I hope to high hell we were listening. And hey, the Germans died too, and so did the Jews and the Gypsies, plus hundreds of thousands of innocent people. And while Hitler was evil and needed dealing with, it was a high price to pay for all nations, and not just ours.
For every moment of silence, there's a lifetime of violence, and people paid the ultimate sacrifice. I'm grateful for that, every time I wake up and the sun is shining. The youth of today must make this relevant. The lives that are gone must not be forgotten. The tortoise, the bear, and the hare. Slow, steady progress is the way to win the race, like the tortoise and the hare securing their seats in the Houses of Parliament. But the tortoise and the hare never knew they were being watched live online by people who never knew them. No one knew about the bear. The bear was at home with his hands across the keyboard, a little overweight, a lot unemployed, and just generally not motivated to race against the tortoise and the hare. In fact, the bear couldn't bear to bare his beer belly, so he grabbed his gun and climbed onto the rooftop. The hare reached the finish line and bang! He got shot in the side of the head, back and to the left. The tortoise saw and turned around, but even a slow zigzag couldn't save him. Bang, 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 and now his shell looks like a hunk of mouldy cheese. The people online got the show they really wanted, and the bear was caught and tried as a domestic terrorist. The end. I was never good with morals. Counting. 10 little blueberries slowly swelling in the sun. 9 aggressive journalists with stories full of blood. 8 incessant bakeries with slowly rising donuts. 7 shady spinsters with their heavy skin like coconuts. 6 insipid pizza men with logos on their boxes. 5 fiery furnaces with bellies full of foxes. 4 affordable freezers freezing blocks of ice. 3 rings for the elven kings as they sit beneath the sky. 2 enchanted heiresses with wedding rings of gold. 1 delighted deity whose story's never told. No more new ideas today, I think my brain is melting. Minus 1 day off my life, I don't think this is helping. The National Arboretum. So much death and wasted potential. Brave boys and girls, dogs, horses, pigeons, postmen killed in action just delivering the mail. Hollow-eyed prisoners of war with no food in their bellies, forced to build Burmese railways, and oh, the birds are so peaceful here. Kids who lied about their age, shot at dawn or sent over the top to stare down the barrels of German guns, men killing men on both sides of the trenches. Groves of trees and names carved into marble blocks, a big bad obelisk as the sun goes down on the Somme, 20,000 dead in 1 day of fighting. Overweight women in motorised chairs, army cadets in camo and middle-aged men drinking Peroni in the cafeteria. 100 years of history represented by the trees of the Arboretum. No time for fight or flight, they just tried to survive with their lives on the line. I couldn't do it, but they did it, so I don't have to. Respect is due, and so I paid it. 2 friends shaking hands in the liver. Coffee, meet booze. Booze, this is coffee, my friend at 9 AM when I'm half awake and struggling to function. Coffee, booze makes me sing karaoke, and sometimes I also fall over. Booze, coffee is the one I warned you about. It sometimes makes my hand shake like you do. Booze, I'm sorry, but I think we need to talk. Coffee, I don't like it when you're black. I'm not a racist, but white is right and black is whack. You can call me a white coffee supremacist. Coffee, you need a little sugar. Booze, you're sweet enough. Booze, I've got the blues. I used to abuse you loosely, but now I need to put the kettle on. Coffee, I'm a-comin'. Don't let me fall asleep in a meeting. Booze, I'm sure I'll see you later. Love poem for a new computer. You, my dear, are a thing of beauty. I mean, get a load of those contours. You are amazing. 16 gigabytes of RAM, ultra-fast processor, triple screen capabilities, and holy moly, I'd like to dip your LEDs in maple syrup. I haven't even met you yet. The stories we'll tell, my God, the work we'll do. I know you don't have feelings, but I've got enough feelings for both of us. I shall name you Jane, so you can be Dane Cobain, my little mainframe. Dear God, you've got more ports than Portsmouth, baby. Open wide and get your trays out. I've got a big old disc to put into you. Jane, I see your software. You remind me of me when I was younger. Now let the race to obsolescence begin. I wonder who'll get there first.
Alright, that was some poems by myself, Dane Cobain, for this week's Rye Zone. You're listening to the Archer on 106.6 FM Wycombe Sound, and we're going to have some music now. This is another demo by Jake Cooper of the Phenomenauts. This is I'll Be Fine.
Still time of simplicity, taken at a time when we were still happy. A cellular picture of your lips on mine, a captured moment of when things were fine. You wake up early, rise into the sunshine. The golden hour brings out the look in your eyes, and you've forgotten about the boy you once knew. The damage he's gone through, all because of you. I'll be fine. It still brings in my mind all the times you knew me, and we dreamt who we could be. But I took the burden, yeah, I took the fall. I just want you to know not sad anymore. In a minor key, postcard onto paper, running out of ink. He wished he could blame her. Starts running with the tears on the page. He tries to write a sad song, but it comes out as rage. Well, I'll be fine. He still brings in my mind all the times you knew me, and we dreamt who we could be. I took the burden, and I took the fall. I just want you to know that I'm not sad anymore. Well, I'll be fine. I took the burden, and I took the fall. I want you to know I'm not sad anymore. I'll be fine. Still brings in my mind all the times you knew me, when we were so happy. But I took the burden, I took the fall. I just want you to know that I'm not sad anymore. Well, I'll be fine. It still brings in my mind times you knew me. We dreamt who we could be. But I took the burden, and I took the fall. I just want you to know that I'm not sad anymore. Well, I took the burden, and I took the fall. I just want you to know I'm not tell me what you found. Stand up, people, take a good look around and see how they're putting us down. Stand up, people, we all live under the same sun. Stand up, people, together as one. Stand up, people, ain't no time to wait. Stand up, people, there ain't no time to wait. Stand up, people, ain't no time to wait. We gotta change things now before it's too late. Stand up, people, ain't no time to wait to put an end to all of this hate. Stand up, people, united we stand, divided we fall. Stand up, people, all for one and one for all. Stand up, people, we all know what to do. Stand up, people, we all know what to do. Stand up, people, we know what to do. We got started now so they can see it. Stand up, people, we know what to do, and now it's up to me and you. Stand up, people, we all live under the same sun. Stand up, people, together as one.
That was Stand Up People by Twangling Jack Ford, and before that we had I'll Be Fine by Jake Cooper. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM at Wycombe Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is normally the part of the show where we get some guests to join us, but today we're having a highlight show, so we're going to start with a little highlight from our chat to local singer-songwriter Esther Hayes.
Well, I suppose as well, like if you're playing with a band, what's nice about that is you can still go back down to just playing by yourself. You know, you can still do the odd acoustic show, or you can play an open mic or whatever you want to do. But obviously then you've got the band for the fuller sound as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So I think I'd be on the lookout for potentially a guitarist, a second guitarist, and maybe someone that plays strings. Like I was thinking either cello or double bass. I think that could add quite a lot to the sound.
Cool. So mentioning Frogfest, I didn't get a chance to check out your set, unfortunately, but I wondered, did you manage to see any of the other performers at Frogfest? And if so, did you have any highlights?
The only other band that I really saw, my dad actually came down over the weekend, so it was the first time I'd seen him in about a year. So I sort of dedicated my time to that. But the only other band that I actually overheard was Amir. I heard playing his last set on the Sunday, and as always, he was obviously amazing.
Awesome. What did you and your dad get up to? Did you manage to make up for? Because I only recently saw my mum for Christmas, so.
Yeah, no, we again, he was only here for a short time, so he came in briefly and met my kitten, who I've had since November, so that was nice. And then we went out. I played the gig, and we went out for some food, and we just caught up there.
Cool. Okay, so a few sort of questions about your work. So one thing I wanted to ask about actually, who's J.R. Dawson, and what can you tell us about your collaborations together?
J.R. Dawson is my friend Jonty. I was very fortunate enough that he went to school with my brother, so I've known him. I've grown up with him being around since I was about 8, and he's an amazing cinematographer and videographer, and we worked together a lot on both our sort of mutual projects. We did some filming together recently, which wasn't for anything music based, but it's always an absolute joy to work with him. And being such a good friend of his as well, it's been so nice to see how his skill and his talent has just grown in waves over the past few years. He's such a beautiful cinematographer. My brother Joe Hyde also releases music, and John T has done a couple of his latest music videos, and they are absolutely beautiful. Really, really stunning.
Cool. Okay, that was Esther Hayes, and here we have Simon Burrows of Simon Says Music Promotion. And in terms of music, do you have like a favourite decade?
Not, I wouldn't say maybe the 60s or 70s, possibly.
Well, I suppose they did like a lot of the groundwork as well and laid the foundations that, you know, even today's music's building on.
Definitely. And I was going to say, as cheesy it is, I suppose you've got the Beatles and everything who obviously grounded everything. Yeah, yeah. So in terms of like a lot of the bands that you follow and the indie artists that you follow, why do you think it's so hard for indie musicians to sort of break through to the mainstream? That's a really good question. I suppose it's because they haven't been given, like I say, given the opportunity and the, without sounding cheesy, the voice to be heard.
Yeah.
It's very sad because I think, I don't know how to, no, this is going to be, please edit this if this sounds really, really bad. But I just think that because somebody like Adele, yes, she's got an amazing voice, but she shouts when she sings, in my personal opinion. And she uses the shouting that most of my artists don't do. But because they don't do that, they don't get the recognition they actually deserve. Because I think it's because most people want everyone to be the same now.
Yeah.
And the formula is you have to do that rather than be who you are and not be an individual.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But I mean, I suppose with your, you know, with Simon Says Music Promotions, you're kind of doing your bit to give them that platform and to give them that voice and to introduce new listeners to new bands and stuff.
I certainly hope so.
And do you find like, you know, some of the musicians that you spotlight or whatever, do they then follow your page and then discover new musicians themselves? Like, are you sort of connecting musicians in a way as well?
Yes, definitely. I've had a few people who have said a couple of the some of the musicians now who've become good friends of mine have now said, oh, we have discovered another artist because of your page. We wouldn't have actually discovered them because.
That's awesome. Cool.
I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Cool. So what do you think's like going to be the next big trend in music? Or do you think it's going to, I guess it could kind of continue towards this sort of homogenization that you sort of alluded to there. Do you think that's going to keep happening, or do we think there's going to be a pushback to that and a demand for more unique stuff? Like, what do you think we'll see in the next 10 years or so?
Well, I'd like the unique stuff to actually reform. I would love to see more artists, like say, more of the individual artists being recognized for who they are, as opposed to saying you have to do what people want you to do. I want them to do their own thing. That's what my dream is.
I mean, do you think, again, is it almost like a capitalist thing, I suppose? Like, I guess, do you think like musicians have to almost choose between conforming to sell more records or having that like self-expression, or is there room for both?
I would like to say there's room for both. But like I said, I think they should have the freedom to do what they want rather than say like a record company telling them you must do.
That was Simon Burrows from Simon Says Music Promotion as part of this week's highlight show. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wycombe Sound, and this is Esther Hayes, who we heard from earlier, with 7 stars.
7 stars lost their light. A burning sun knocked them out with all its blinding, raging might. It smashed them apart like a child with a hammer. Unconscious of the damage inflicting, unaware of the impact of careless careless actions, careless actions. The stars had to learn the sun wasn't only to blame. The stars had to learn not to let the sun play this game. 7 stars lost their light, and with them left the night, left the sky blank. Silly stars should have known, should have seen it coming a mile from home. There's nothing new here, trouble always follows the sun and all it's becoming, becoming, becoming. The stars had to learn the sun wasn't only to blame. The stars had to learn not to let the sun play this game. You played a game, always leaving me burned. I'm the one to blame for you, I always yearn. I screamed foul play, you smiled and walked away. For you, these things never mattered to you. Matters of the heart and nothing but clutter. 7 stars lost their light. Why did they never falter? Why did they never falter? With undivided dedication, unaltered, they hope for the sun to have changed, for this situation to have grown. The stars had to learn the sun wasn't only to blame. The stars had to learn not to let the sun play this game. The stars had to learn the sun wasn't only to blame. The stars had to learn not to let the sun play this game. You played a game, always leaving me burned. I'm the one to blame. Oh, you played a game, always leaving me burned. I'm the one to blame. For you, I always yearn.
That was 7 Stars by Esther Hayes. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wycombe Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain. And we've got a bit of a highlight show this week, so we are going to go over to a highlight of our chat with local singer-songwriter Caitlin McAvoy.
And yeah, so I guess because by the time this goes out, the gig will have already happened as well. But you know, it'd be good to let us know about a few of the acts that you've booked for that and what it's been like for you as well, because you've pretty much sort of curated your own lineup. And I guess this is good practice for you for when you go off to uni as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. So myself and Oscar are going to be doing a little set of just like acoustic songs. So first there's a guy called Joe Ryder. He went to my secondary school. He's just finishing year 11 now. I think he's a singer-songwriter as well. So he's just bringing him and his guitar. I think he's bringing a little loop pedal. So I don't know what he's doing with that, but I'm sure it'll be very exciting. And then Kamani Charles, he's just a guitarist, very, very unique style, but I could just sit there and listen to him playing for ages. It's great. And then Charlie McAvoy, I've never met him before, but I was recommended to speak to him about playing, and he has a single out on Spotify called Second Guess, I believe. it sounds amazing. So I'm very excited to hear him play live. And then we have Off Party, who are playing at Penfest this year. So that will be very exciting as well to hear them playing live and doing an acoustic set, because they're not very acoustic at all. So it's a bit of a change up for them, I think.
All right, that was a highlight from our chat with Caitlin McAvoy, and here is a bit of our chat with Florence Pritchard, who is running films at Wycombe Arts Centre over on Desborough Road.
Cool, and you mentioned sort of a little bit of your vision about films at Wycombe Arts Centre, and I just wondered if you could sort of tell us a little bit about it, what it is and how it got started.
Well, so initially the idea was a community cinema that we'd have, and we launched that and ran that a couple of years ago. At Wycombe Arts Centre. Again, I mean, very much I had that sort of vision of that that student cinema that I'd been to in Canterbury in mind, just a place where anyone in the community could come along, could have a bit of a say in what they were watching, and maybe just to bring together some other people who were enthusiastic about films to chat about them too. That didn't quite kind of work out for various reasons, but I started speaking to the wonderful folks, including yourself, at Wycombe Arts Centre about what might be possible, and that's where we came up with this new kind of approach to it, where actually we were offering free films once a month. We were getting people involved in organising it, and we also were able to invest in some really great new equipment as well. So yeah, that's kind of the journey so far, and it's really early days because I'm not sure. I think this is going to go out next week. I don't know if I'm doing a spoiler behind the scenes, but we're recording this on Friday. So our next film will be our second screening will be Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. So we'll have only had 2 films so far, and we're kind of shaping it as we go along to see what people want. I can come in with my grand vision and put on the films that I want to see, but then it would just be me sat there in the hall on my own. So I'd rather have it something that we can kind of build together as a community.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. And obviously there's the Facebook group that people can join as well. Why should people join the Facebook group?
Yeah, so it's Films at Wycombe Arts Centre. That's where you can get involved in both sort of choosing the theme of the film. You can then choose the actual put forward suggestions for the films that we watch. You can vote on our top 3 that we select, and then you can find out which one has won. So basically, if you want to know anything about the films, you have to be in the Facebook group. So go and join right now.
Okay, that was a highlight of our chat with Florence Pritchard, and now we're going to go over to Sloth in the City, Andrea and Betty. So over to the Slothsters.
So to get onto the topic of Sloth in the City and your music, could you introduce the band and what you both do in it?
So we are a duo that was founded 4 years ago.
It says
almost 5 since we are together. Because
yeah,
we
basically
are a
lasted as
yeah.
long as our relationship.
Yeah, so like 5 years almost.
Yeah.
Almost 5 years, and we started with some idea from me, like compositional ideas, but and so for the saxophone, the soprano saxophone, and Andrea added a lot of musicality more with his acoustic guitar and his style that is a finger style.
Yeah, you can kind of see it as like a way percussive acoustic guitar can be blended into a situation that isn't necessarily solo guitar, and I'm quite happy with the way it's going, just because it's percussive guitar seems to be a bit of a gimmick, and I'm trying really, really hard to prove otherwise. That's kind of like my agenda in a sense. And it's like really nice to actually have someone beside me to play the melodies, and me not being center stage, but actually like being someone else's band in a sense.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I mean, so you mentioned like the percussive guitar, and you know there are I suppose quite a few different influences on your sound, and that's what kind of really interests me about it, because you've got almost like a sort of a classical element from like a classic I suppose like what I would call like a proper musician approach to it from Betty with the sax, and then you've got like almost elements of sort of folk in there as well. You know,
how many different genres do you reckon you blend together? And are there any that you wouldn't want to incorporate?
I think we play jazz, folk, classic, contemporary music, and we don't play pop together. I think pop, no.
Wow!
Just
So
a little. Maybe the last album will have some pop. Just one song.
there's a track in the album called Santiago, and that's definitely very Radioheady sort of thing. Despite neither of us being a fan of Radiohead, which is quite
I was
interesting.
a fan before met him.
But I think it kind of describes what we came across. Like the folk side of it, it is a very happy accident, because I came across English folk just by stumbling upon the Folk Society when I was studying in Southampton, and that just like stuck to me as like something that I was just like missing in my life, and I started compulsively like listening to folk and playing sessions and that sort of stuff. And in comes Betty, who just learned all the European folk coming from French in Italy just by dancing in Italy. So like that's just like that became a very, very big influence in what we do.
That was a highlight from our show with Sloth in the City, and this is part of our chat with David Leach, who's a local artist.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Psycho Gran as well.
Oh yes.
And I wondered, where did you get the idea from, and what is it about the character that you love?
Well, funnily enough, finally you should ask me that. So Psycho Gran was my first professional cartoon character. I'd done characters before. And they appeared in, local newspapers and things like that. But Psycho was the first one for a national comic. And her coming into being happened like this, which was I was working for Bob. And one day I saw a brand new kids comic was being advertised called Oink. Now, the thing about kids comics back then anyway, was that they weren't very funny. So you'd have these kids comics and they'd always end up with the punchline would always be chortle now for a slap up down the local chippy, or here's £5, and there'd always be reader's voice coming in saying, oh, that's great, that sort of stuff. So they weren't particularly funny, but Oink was different. Oink was something brand new for kids comics. For a start, most comics at the time were either produced by IPC, who were based in London, or DC Thompson, who were based up in Scotland or in Dundee, and then you had Oddams. Oddams was going out by then. So IPC was the big one. They're the big London ones. So comics used to be controlled and manufactured from the head office in London, but Oink was different. It was actually created and edited by three young blokes in Manchester. So they were completely free of the whole management scheme, so they could do whatever they wanted to, and they had a real vision for this comic. And so it was Tony Husband, Mark Rogers, and Mark Gallagher. They were the three guys behind it, and they got together a whole team of young cartoonists. So people like Charlie Brooker, who now does Black Mirror. It was his first job was working on Oink. So I saw an advert for Oink, and I thought I've got to be in it. So I approached IPC, who were the publisher of it, and I had to do a tryout. So I was not forced. I was offered to draw a strip for Wizard and Chips comic, and if it was good enough, they would publish that, and they would also give me an introduction to Oink. So I did that, did a four weeks worth of strips for Wizard and Chips, and then I had to come up with a cartoon character. So I've always had this idea about humor. Okay, is that humor you can do humor in one of two ways. You either have a crazy character and you put them in the real world, and the humor comes from how that character reacts, or you put a real character in a crazy world. So obviously Psycho is the first, which is she's a crazy character and you stick her in the real world. So once I knew that was the approach I wanted, it was just trying to think of, I was playing with different types, different cartoon characters. So I thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun if you had a cute little kitten who was really cute and adorable, but it's actually really violent? I thought, no, it's been done a million times. So I went through all the different permutations, and then suddenly I thought back to the things that I loved as a kid, and there were three things I loved as a kid. Well, many more than three. But in terms of what inspired me, there was the Goodies, who did a great funny sketch about grannies, which I loved as a kid. Then there was Monty Python, who did a fantastic sketch called The Hell's Grannies. And then there was Giles the cartoonist. Now, Giles had a family called the Giles family in his comic strips. And one of them was Grandma, who used to sit in the background and never say anything, but she was hilarious. And I always remember one cartoon that completely just blew me away when I saw it. And it was a main gag. So the Giles family was sitting in the room, and they're watching a news report about the budget. And so Dad Giles is talking to wife Giles about the budget and the jokes about that. But in the background, Granny sat there doing a puzzle. And what made this so funny was it's just a little aside. She sat at a little table doing a puzzle, and she's got a hammer in her hand and she's hammering the pieces. I thought that was hilarious. So anyway, that's where the inspiration for Psycho came from. So the idea of, I wanted to do a character that looked incredibly like, everyone thinks the elderly are sort of like, oh, they're, you know, they never think that the elderly have had lives, have done something. Yeah. So I thought, wouldn't it be really funny if you had a cartoon character who looked really old and frail and delicate and, oh dear heavens to Bitsy, I'm very old. But in actual fact was the most violent, the strongest, the most vicious thing on the whole planet. And that was Psycho Gran. And then basically she just arrived fully formed. It was just like, oh my goodness. And once she popped into my head, I did the first gag, which was a joke I remember being told as a kid, which was she's standing on a pier. She's shouting out 159, 159, and this bloke walks up to me. He says, "Excuse me, madam, I can't help noticing that you've been stood here all day shouting out 159. Can I ask you why?" And she grabs him and she chucks him over the pier and she says, 160.
All right, that was part of our chat with David Leach, a local artist. You're listening to the Art Show on 106.6 FM Wycombe Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain, and this is Without You by Off Party.
To describe someone like you, I know they're in there, I just haven't thought it through. There's nothing like giving up when it's giving up too soon.
That was Sunset by France Ellul, and before that we had Without You by Off Party. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wycombe Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain, and we are going to head over to the Ilk Shed to get this week's album review from Twangling Jack Ford.
Electric Warrior, T-Rex. When I was very young, the early Beatles singles like Please Please Me and Can't Buy Me Love made me want to jump all over the furniture. My interest in pop music came and went as I built train sets and rode my bike across streams and made camps in the local waste ground. When I bought the single of Get It On by T-Rex, it played on repeat for days and I really wanted to jump all over the furniture. In 1971 we waited for the Electric Warrior album. The anticipation was stepped up by the release of the Jeepster single. It had one of the best lines in rock and roll, a line so dangerous that my parents hated it. Girl, I'm just a vampire for your love, and I'm gonna suck you. Before Bowie, Mark Bolan was glam, and he shared a producer with Bowie, so the sound of Electric Warrior is a foretaste of the sound of Ziggy. Though he went on to make the stunning Metal Guru and the anthemic Children of the Revolution, Electric Warrior is Mark Bolan's masterpiece. His soft croony voice, his distinctive style of melodic lead guitar, and his uniquely poetic but utterly nonsensical lyric style will convince you to be that cosmic dancer under the Mambo sun, because life is a gas. Electric Warrior, Mark Bolan, T-Rex.
Alright, thank you to Twangling Jack Ford, thank you to everyone whose music I shared today and everyone who appeared in the highlights episode. As always, if you've got any feedback or if you want to join me on the show here, you can email me at the studio on dane.cobain@wycombesound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wycombesound.org.uk. And I'm always keen to hear from local creatives, artists, musicians, that sort of thing. You can also find us on Facebook if you search for The Art Show on Wycombe Sound, and you can listen again on the Listen Again on Wycombe Sound's website, iTunes, Spotify, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us. So I'm going to leave you with one last tune, and this is the incredible Steph Willis with All In. I will see you next week.
Lately, I've been thinking about you daily. Caught up in the heat of the night that you caught my eye. They called time and I said goodbye. Left us right there up in the distance, surrounded by the walls that I made just to keep me safe. But you walked right through